Hello, dear sinceres. I know it's already a bit late, but I did not want to not make the video. So let's talk about the full moon in Aries taking place today. So full moons are periods that tend to carry some tension, stress. They tend to be like a peak of an energy, a culmination of something, or like having the volume up to the maximum. That is why in these periods we see associations with werewolves and stories about haunted houses and all creepy sort of things, now that we are coming to Halloween. And you see in these stories the full moon depicted or drawn, or its imagery somehow, because the full moon has this association very much with the astral plane, with the other world, and is also associated with words like lunatic and lunacy, who were attributed in ancient years, in ancient decades or centuries, not decades, centuries, to people who would be suffering these effects from the moon, where they would get a bit hysterical or would be too much with their head out in the clouds, or a bit confused or a bit lost. I don't know if you can hear right now, but if you do, there's a child or someone screaming outside. And so I think this perfectly describes certain moon effects maybe that they are suffering from. And the full moon is basically this opposition between the sun and the moon, where the moon will fully reflect the light of the sun to us. And it's also when we can get overly emotional and deeply affected by energies and other vibrations if we are sensitive. And usually when that happens, it's really not in the best way. However, after the peak, there's usually a decline. So this is also a period to see what is not serving us anymore, to let go, to detach, to forgive. It gives us also an opportunity to make a revision of where we are heading and to reevaluate the two polar signs opposites. And in this case today we have the sun in Libra and Aries, where the moon, full moon will take place. So this axis of the Aries and Libra, sun in Libra, moon, full moon in Aries, speaks of the duality between being in a relationship and tending to another person's needs and our own needs, and being independent and self-centered and focused in ourselves. It speaks also of sacrificing one's own desires to please another person, or to put self first over the other. And perhaps also the relationship can take either the first or the second place, or the other person. Aries is a pioneer, a warrior, takes the first step, has initiative, wants to be number one, and sometimes it doesn't listen, doesn't care about what someone else wants. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now. It's unafraid, bold, courageous, and will charge forth. Libra, however, will seek relationships, wants to find their soulmate, and only feels whole by being with another person, relating to another person, seeks to find a place of harmony, of getting along, of sometimes people pleasing and giving up on oneself to please the other person. And they tend to see themselves through the relationship with another person. That's how Libras usually feel seen and valued, and that they matter. However, Aries doesn't really care. He likes to be number one. He's not afraid to be alone and go at it alone. Which does not mean that Aries does not like company. They do. They love followers. They love having people who follow them and agree with them. So with this full moon is a period to ask if your needs are being met, and if your partner's needs are being met, how balanced your relationship is. How much do you seek validation from others, or do you believe in yourself enough? Have you been too self-centered? Are you open for a relationship? Have you been acting too selfishly or being too impulsive or going too fast? Are you being too codependent, submissive to get the love of someone? Have you been too competitive, insensitive, rash with your words, or have you quit things you love and like to make someone else happy? The dispositor of the full moon, Mars, is in Gemini and will be going retrograde at the end of the month. Mars in Gemini will give someone fast, quick mind, very sharp, with great words, a great ability to communicate, usually fast, and sometimes it might actually express itself a little bit too assertive, or have its words come out impulsive or angry ways as well, and not thinking much before talking, before speaking. And so with Mars in Gemini getting retrograde, there may be something that you want to speak and that you speak and that you say out of impulsion, and that you can regret later. During the retrograde period, you might actually rethink what the things you said or the things were told or spoken out of this impulsivity. And there can be some regret about those things that have been spoken and have been coming out of impulsivity. Moving into the retrograde asks us to also slow down, because moving into the retrograde, we have this need to slow down a bit. We are forced to slow down. We can also become a bit distracted and scattered in our minds, our thoughts, our words, and our communication. We can get an overwhelm of information, and this information might not be looked through or sorted through and looked at in a way that really makes sense and really shows, really seeks the truth and really shows the facts. This full moon is also taking place in a Leo decan and a Libra duad. And so again, this relationship theme repeats because of Libra. But Leo also talks about romance. And also with Leo decan, the self-esteem, the self-expression, the following of one's own heart and desire, the connection with the inner child are also things to be considered. In this full moon, we also have conjunction with Chiron in Aries, of the full moon and Chiron, and the full moon in Chiron will be opposite Venus and the Sun, which will be conjunct. Chiron speaks of the wound inside ourselves that we carry, but we don't know where it is from or why we carry it around, because Chiron in our chart is there to point to a wound that can come from a trauma, but is also there so that once you heal it, you are healing it on behalf of the collective unconscious. Venus talks of what we value and your self-esteem, self-value, self-worth. With the moon augmenting our sensitivity, this wound of Chiron might get pressed and activated in our sense of self, in our sense of who we are, of our individuality. And so with having this opposition, the opposition between full moon, Chiron, and Venus and the Sun makes us even more sensitive, and we can hurt easily. We might feel rejected, unwanted, but it is also a call for healing, for going beyond trauma. This opposition alludes to tensions between the feminine and masculine. Chiron speaks of the wounded masculine as it is in Aries, which is a very masculine sign ruled by Mars, which is basically the representation of masculine, and is in opposition to the Sun. Well, Sun represents individuality, and Sun in Libra is in fall, because the Sun here, the individuality, gets overshadowed by meeting the other person, meeting the other. And so in the Sun in Aries, the opposite sign, is actually in exaltation. So It is in exaltation because in Aries prizes for individuality and for the self. And so the Sun exalts here because it is very much about individuality, about the self. Venus is ruling. She rules Libra, but Chiron calls to the healing of this relationship in the masculine within ourselves that wants to shine and at the same time wants to find the inner warrior. Moon, being a feminine planet that represents the mother, is appealing for the feminine to help in this healing role, because the feminine can be, as a mother, can be a very fierce warrior. And we all know that usually the fiercest of warriors are mothers. You really don't want to mess with a mother when they get really, really enraged because they cannot stand something being done to their children. There's usually nothing that stops them. So they can do the impossible because it comes from this incredible love that they nurture for their children. Another interesting thing about this full moon is that the opposition of the full moon to the Sun, and the full moon being conjunct with Chiron, might also indicate some levels of our vitality being depleted, because the Sun, to begin with, is in Libra, which is in fall. So the Sun will be depleted, which is our vitality, will be depleted in Libra. But then we also have this intense opposition of the moon, which the moon is also representative of our own physical body. And the full moon is conjunct with Chiron, which is the wounded healer. So there is some theme here about disease and sickness, or about depletion of vitality, where having this moon in Aries opposite the Sun, which represents also our vitality, our energy, which is also in a position of depletion, can make us feel a little bit low physically, low energy, depleted energetically, and maybe even some kind of sickness coming to the front, where we feel some kind of symptoms that we already having before going worse, or some pains getting worse. So do pay attention to that as well. The Sun and Venus makes us want to feel valued, seen, loved by the others. We feel more sociable, we become more popular, and we like a certain level of fame, sometimes to the point where we try to adjust too much to others and forget about what we really want, what our needs are. And with the moon in Aries, these wants and needs can erupt and manifest. The desire to be seen and valued connects with the Leo decan. The Libra side wants peace, harmony, acts with diplomacy. However, Aries wants to be seen, go forward. There is also a trine to Saturn to the Sun and Venus, which gives solidity, grounding, maturity, asking this wounded masculine to grow, to mature, providing also a father figure by sextile to the moon and Chiron. Saturn is also connected to the father energy as it rules Capricorn. This can also allude to grandparents, as Saturn is depicted as a much older man. A man is in his seniority, so much older than the Sun in mythology, who usually takes the role of the father in astrology. During this full moon, we are back to the Uranus-Saturn exact square, the last of this aspect, which might be the one that really takes the world on a no-return journey to what it used to be. From here onwards, all will be something new. This is where we might see complete changes in the financial system, food and agriculture, land, in people's lifestyle and resources, and most likely on themes related to climate change and ecology. So this full moon, the last before the solar eclipse in Scorpio, and with this square is also the square between Uranus and Saturn, is also a call to the inner warrior inside of us that fights for justice, fairness, for the planet, for freedom. calling us to action to promote the change of consciousness, as Jupiter is also very close to the world axis, going back to Pisces in retrograde. And we also have Pallosetina squaring the full moon, emphasizing this call to arms to the inner warrior. Because Pallosetina is a warrior. She is the warrior princess of old age, of ancient antiquity. She was the warrior goddess of wisdom, of war, that would protect and defend the city and those who needed protection and who needed to be defended. This full moon in Aries, just before the eclipse, also seems like a prelude for the upcoming solar eclipse in Aries season that will take place next year. Neptune is squaring Mars, adding to the fogginess in the retrograde of Mars, where the warrior might feel a bit lost, doesn't see things clearly, and might not want to face things face reality and deal with life. So there's space for procrastination, to find excuses, to feel like a victim. However, this square speaks of aligning the personal will with the divine will of God to take action on behalf of our ideals and not just wallow in victimhood of our wounds. Mercury is also trining Pluto and lending a profound vision to things, so we can look to things more deeply and see the deeper layers, the deeper meanings, to understand deeper concepts, and to not just see them superficially, but see them on several different levels of understanding and comprehension. Not just what we see with our eyes, but what we also can understand with our hearts, with our souls, with our spirit, with our psyche. And in other people as well, we can understand their psyche, where they're coming from, why they act the way they do, what makes them tick, what makes them do and react the way they do. So there's a lot of space here for psychological introspection of ourselves and others. And during this period, we can then, in resume, see how we can heal the masculine and the feminine wound, this kind of gap and disparity that's been occurring between the feminine and the masculine, between men and women. But this is also inside of ourselves, between our masculine and feminine sides. And also the wound of our individuality, of our self-worth and self-value, and the healing that can come through getting in touch with the feminine soft side, this kind of nurturing motherly nature, that wants to nurture, wants to take care, but also wants to protect, to defend, and to heal through Chiron this wound of self, of our individuality. We can look as well to take action and to recover our inner warrior, to get in touch with our bravery and act as defenders and protectors of the planet and of each other, of freedom and finding alternatives to issues we might come across, but also as staying in our power mentally, as things will get more chaotic and dramatic with the month, and doing it so in a way that is diplomatic, harmonious, that meets the other, that has tact, that seeks understanding, that comes through love. As we get in touch with the warrior energy, it's good to remember to do it so in peace, in harmony, in trying to speak and communicate with the other, to mediate ourselves with another, and find this win-win situation, find the point where both parties can take what they need and what they want, to listen and be listened to find how we can heal one another, how we can find the commonalities of one another, to see the shadow in ourselves and to see the shadow of the other in ourselves as well. And also is an opportunity to work on our relationships and find the balance between our own needs and the needs of the other person. And so that's it, dear sinceres. I hope you have enjoyed I'm sorry today I'm not showing my face, but I just really wanted to do this quick video as today is the full moon, and I hope you do like it, and if so, please remember to press like below, subscribe to this channel, visit me at my website cynthiasincere.com, and feel free to subscribe there.